Welcome to Lesson 3 of the DB2 on Campus lecture series. Today we're talking about tools and scripting, and this is part 2 of 2 parts. My name is Raul Chong, and I'm the DB2 on Campus Program Manager. In the first part, we'll cover the first 3 sections of this agenda, and in this second part, we'll start talking about the command window and the command line processor, or CLP. So let's start with the command window, and rather than showing you these slides, let me actually do some demonstrations. So to start the command window, you can do it in different ways. You can go to Start, Programs, IBM DB2, DB2 Copy 1, and then Command Line Tools, then Command Window. This is the long way to do it. The short way to do it would be to go to Start, Run, and just type DB2 CMD and press Enter. Note that the title of this window is DB2 CLP, DB2 Copy 1. So there is a distinction. Like, many people may get confused about this window because they think it's an MS-DOS prompt window. An MS-DOS prompt window is not the same. So for example, if I type from here DB2 connect to sample, I have no problems in connecting. On the other hand, if I start a regular CMD or MS-DOS prompt like here, and I type DB2 connect to sample, then I will get an error message because this is not the command window or command line processor. I can from here type DB2 CMD, and that would open another window, which is another DB2 command window. I just closed the MS-DOS prompt. So anyway, just make sure that you're working with the command line processor or command window by looking at this title, and it's not the same as a regular MS-DOS prompt. And now that I have 2 windows open, you can treat each of these windows as independent applications in a sense. So from here I could connect to another database and say DB2 connect research, and now I'm connected to the research database in this window. I'm connected to the sample database in this other window. So you can think of these windows as different applications that are connecting to different databases or even to the same database. Let me just exit from this window to keep things more clean. Now from here we're talking about the DB2 command window, and that means that every command you execute will has to be prefixed by the keyword DB2. Okay, so right now that I'm connected, if I do DB2 select star from a staff, then I will get the output. And by the way, if you're working on Linux, you need to put quotes here. On Windows is optional, but on Linux you need to put the quotes because otherwise Linux parser may interpret the wild characters in a different way. So on Windows, as I said before, it's optional. Okay, now what happens if I type just the command DB2 and press enter? If I do that, the prompt changes to saying DB2. Okay, so when the prompt says DB2, as in this case, all I need to do is I don't need to prefix anything with DB2 anymore. I can just type connect to sample from here without prefixing. I can do select star from a staff without doing any prefixing because I'm within the DB2 prompt. When I'm within the DB2 prompt, this is called the command line processor. If I'm outside, if I type quit and I'm outside, so now the prompt is different, then this is called the command window. So that's the only difference between the command window and the command line processor. The command window, the prompt will not have DB2. The command line processor, the prompt will have DB2. Okay, now my preference is to work from this prompt. That means from the command window, because if I work from this prompt, which is the operating system prompt, I can issue statements like this. I can say DB2 select star from department, and I can redirect this to another file. Let's call it, I can put it into a file, let's say raolerase.txt, for example, and I'm redirected the file. I can open the file, raolerase.txt, that will open Notepad, and I get my result here, right? So basically, because I'm working from this prompt, I can use some operating system characters like a redirection, and while in the DB2 prompt I would not be able to do this. Okay, so that's pretty much it with respect to the command window and the command line processor, and we'll talk more later about, or we'll use more of these tools later when we talk about scripting. So let's exit from now and let's move on to the next presentation or next slide. So now we're going to talk about the task center. So what is a task center? Again, let me just provide a demo from here. The task center can be started with in different methods as well. You can go to Start Programs, IBM DB2, DB2 Copy 1, and then from here you choose the General Administration Tools, and then you choose Task Center. Another way to start it would be to use Start Run DB2 TC. T for Task, C for Center, and again on Linux you can start these tools this way as well. So I click OK, and I'm starting the DB2 Task Center. Now, as shown here on the presentation, the Task Center and Journal, or this type of tools where you need scheduling, requires another database or another set of tables called the Tools Catalog. Okay, this is basically a set of tables that will store all the scheduling information. Like, for example, if you want to perform a backup at 3 a.m. in the morning, that information will be stored in this Tools Catalog database or set of tables. You can create these tables. I'll show you right now in a few minutes how to create it. So this is a task center. To create that Tools Catalog database, you can go to Tool Settings, and then from here you go to Scheduler Settings, and from here this is the area that you need to complete to create the Tools Catalog. In my case, it's not letting me create another tool catalog because it's already been created, so that's why this is being grayed out. Anyway, it's fairly easy to create a Tools Catalog database, so I'm sure you can complete that task. Okay, now that I'm in the Task Center, the Task Center, as the name says, is used to create some tasks, right? And the example I gave you is a typical example of using a task. So the example I provided was to create a backup at 3 a.m. in the morning let's say every Sunday. So obviously you don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and issue the backup command. So what you could do is you can create a task, and you can schedule the task for this backup to be executed at 3 a.m. in the morning on Sundays automatically. Right. So let me just create a task very quickly right now. I can click on Task, New. I can say, okay, what's the name of my task? Let's say I'm going to call it My Task, and I'm going to put a name. This is a test, and it could be a DB2 command script, an OS command script, even an MBS shell script. So you could also do tasks to execute against the mainframe. Then we have to specify which instance we want to execute this task on. You can click on those three buttons, choose a DB2 instance and a partition, and we click on that arrow and then click OK. Now in DB2 Express C there's only one partition, so it will always be 0, right? But with other editions you can have more partitions, and this is not going to be covered in this particular course. Now I move on to the next tab, so I click on Command Script, and from here I can do connect to sample. So here's where I'm creating my script, and I chose it was going to be a DB2 script, so I can issue SQL statements here. I say connect to sample, select star from staff, okay, select star from employee, etc., etc. The termination character again is a semicolon, and then run properties. You could add more information for run properties. We're just gonna keep it simple. We can as well put in some information in terms of scheduling, notification. You know, if your task is successful or if there's a failure, who should I contact? Task action. So that means if the task is successful, should I run another task? Should I enable scheduling of another task? Should it delete a task, etc., etc.? If the task fails, the same conditions. You could do other actions. Security in terms of who can run this task. So right now, let's just click OK, and that will create my task, which is shown here. I can run it now by right-clicking on the task and choosing Run Now. So I just I'm gonna put my password here, and I execute, and you can see that the icon now changes to a man running because the task is running right now. If I refresh this, I go View, Refresh. The icon shows that the task has finished, and there's a check saying that the task was run successfully. I can choose the task, right-click, and show the results if I want to from here, and I can take a look. That was the script that I ran, and here's my output. So I connected, I executed select start from staff, select start from employee, and everything was fine. Right, so that's how you can create a task. And now from here, since we're working with tasks, we're also going to talk about Journal, which is another tool. So let's click on this button to start the journal. The journal is basically showing you several messages, either for showing you task history, database history, messages, and notification log. So for task history, I can choose the system which I want to take a look at the task, and here we can see the same task that I ran from the task center. So I can double click on this task, and it's the same dialog box or the same window that I showed you before when I right click on the task and show results, right? So from the journal you can also see the results of your task. You can see some information about databases, messages in general, and the notification log for different messages at the system level. So this is a good place for a database administrator to find problems. Let's say a user comes to you and says, or drops by your office and says, I noticed that yesterday at 6 p.m. The system was running slow or something like that, and then you as a DBA can go to this journal and then try to find at 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. whenever the problem was being reported, to see what type of messages you find at that time. So that's one of the main purposes of using the journal. It basically keeps tracks or logs messages about things going on with the database. Okay, so that's the task center, that's the journal, and let's move on with this presentation. So I already talked about the journal. Now let's talk about Health Center. So the Health Center is basically a tool that allows me to be proactive about my database, right? So rather than waiting for a problem to happen, let's set up some thresholds, some limits, where I will get a warning or an alert, right? So those will be sent to me before the problem happens, and that way I'm being a proactive DBA. So let me show you very quickly the Health Center. I can go to Start, Programs, IBM DB2, DB2 Copy 1, and then I go to Monitoring Tools and choose Health Center. Now, from the Health Center, you can configure things at the instance level or at the database level. So there are different levels that you can perform configuration, and this tells you how often you will refresh the information. So right now I can expand this, and in this case I'm seeing that I'm getting some sort of alarm for the monitor heap utilization, which has a value of 100%. Right, so this is telling me there's a problem right now for this DB2 instance. I can also configure, like if I choose Health Center Configure, I can configure different settings, as I said before, at the instance level, global setting or object setting. If I choose at the instance level and I select the DB2 instance, then at the instance level I have, in this case, only three settings. So in this case, for example, monitor heap utilization, I have that the warning would be sent at 85%, an alarm will be sent at 95%, and the unit that is used is percentage. I can double click here and I could change this to different values, right? 88%, 96%, etc., etc. But basically here I'm setting the the thresholds that I want, so that I get these messages and I can take a proactive approach. So that's just basically that's the main purpose of using the Health Center. Moving on, we're now going to talk about scripting. So there are two types of scripting. One is called an SQL script, which means all the contents on your script will be SQL statements, and the other one are operating system scripts or shell scripts, which are scripts from the operating system. So we're first going to talk about SQL scripts, and here I have one example where the name of the script is script1.db2. Now the extension doesn't have to be db2, it could be anything. Okay, and the contents are SQL statements, and in an SQL script you need to use a terminator character. In this case is the semicolon, which is the default terminator character. So let's create quickly a script from here. Let me exit from here and let's use Notepad, and let me call this Raul script.txt. Right, this is a new file, and from here I say connect to sample, select star from department, and then let's say create procedure P1 begin N. Okay, so I'm just going to sample database, selecting everything from department and creating a store procedure. We'll talk about store procedures later, and this store procedure is doing nothing, but it could be created like this. Actually, I think I already have a procedure with this name, so let me put P199. Okay, now I'm going to go file and save. Okay, so now I just created my script. And by the way, we already covered scripts as well when we're talking about the command editor. From the command editor we also save a script, and when we open it, right? So you could work either from the command editor, which is a GUI version of the command window or the command line processor, or you can work here from the command line processor. Now to execute this script, you invoke db2 first, and typically you invoke a script using these flags tvf and then the name of the script. Okay, what does the T means? It means there's a terminator character, and I'm not indicating which one it is because by default it's the semicolon. Okay, so just by putting a T means there's a terminator character. V means it's optional, but it means verbose, so echo the command and then produce the output. And F means that the commands are coming from a file, which in this case is this script file raul.txt. So if I press enter now, it's going to execute the script as you saw. Right, so it executed the script successfully, and that's very good. So now what happens if I change the terminator character, and let's say I put an exclamation mark, and exclamation mark, and let me add a drop procedure P199 here, because otherwise it will complain saying that the procedure already exists when it tries to create again. So let me put that as part of the a script, and then go file, save. And now to run this new script, I cannot run it like this because the T means there's a terminator, but it will assume that is a semicolon terminator. So now that I'm using a different terminator, I have to put here a D to indicate the delimiter, and the delimiter that I'm using, which is an exclamation mark, and then I need a space, and I continue with the other options. So here I need a space, so that's why this needs to be started again. I cannot put it all together, so I go db2-td exclamation mark means there's a terminator where the delimiter is an exclamation mark, and then continue with verbose, and it comes with from a file, and this is the file name. So now I execute this, and again it executes successfully, including the drop. Right? So that's how I can execute a script from this command window, and you can also execute this script from the command editor just by opening the same file. Now this is we worked on a basic SQL script, and this is more information about some of the flags that I used. If you want to know more about these flags, you can type the command list command options, and it'll show you all the different flags that you can use and also the current setting. Okay. Now, if on this other slide, it shows you typical problem that can happen with scripts. So let me go back to this script here. Right. In this case, I was creating a procedure that was doing nothing, but let's put some code here. So I could say, now I can say declare x, it's an integer, then set x equals to 1, and so on. Now for a store procedure, let me do some indentation. For a store procedure, every sentence needs to end with a semicolon as part of the syntax of create procedure, but the entire statement is all of these, which ends with an exclamation mark. Right. Now, what if I had not used the exclamation mark as my delimiter? If all of these had been a semicolon as my exclamation mark, which is a default, then I would have had a problem, because DB2 will say, okay, here my statement terminates because I found a semicolon. Here my statement terminates because I found a semicolon, and so on and so on. But now when it goes to here, it would say, oh, okay, this one stops here because here's where I found my semicolon. But that's incorrect, because the whole statement should end here, right? So basically, you should make sure you change your terminator. Let's say in this case is a @ symbol. Whenever you are using a character that is used in other statements. So in create procedure, we use a semicolon. In a create table statement, we say create table T1 call 1 comma call 1 integer comma call 2 integer. Right here, you know, if we had used a comma as a terminator of the entire statement, then it will also cause a problem, right? So it's just information for you, so that you make sure to change the terminator so there is no conflict with characters that are used within the statement. So let's just save this and let's execute it again. We change the terminator to an @ symbol in this case. So we execute, and again connects, and then successfully creates the procedure P199 again. Okay, now moving on, we're now going to talk about operating system scripts. And in Windows, you'll have to create a script and add the batch BAT or batch extension. So this is required on Windows. In Linux, you would basically have to change mod plus X, you know, give executable privilege to the given file. Within the file, as shown in this example, you can use operating system commands like set, and then if you want to invoke DB2 SQL scripts within your operating system script, just invoke it as I showed you before, right? You can use db2-td @ symbol, etc., etc. So within an operating system script, you can invoke SQL scripts, but make sure to invoke them correctly. Now, the advantage of using operating system scripts versus SQL scripts is that you can add parameters, like you can see here. For example, %dbname%, that's a parameter or a variable that you can use from the operating system command, and this would be a variable using the syntax on Windows. On Linux would be a different syntax, right? So there are pros and cons. If you use an SQL script, it doesn't matter if it's Linux or Windows, it's the same syntax. But if you use operating system scripts, you know, depending on the operating system, the syntax of the script may have to be changed a little bit. Okay, so for this particular script, you could execute the command like this, right? So if I were to create the previous script that I had here as a operating system script, first of all, I just have to get rid of these terminator characters. I can say, for example, dir set let's say set db2 instance equals to db2, and then I can connect to sample, but actually I cannot do this. I have to say db2 connect to sample, right? Then here I can say db2, I can put quotes or not, depending if it's Windows or not, and db2 draw procedure, etc., etc. And let's just for simplicity get rid of this. I could put this in a template file and invoke that file from here. But anyway, so this could be a operating system script where I'm using an operating system command, dir. I'm also using operating system command set, and I'm invoking db2, and I can also invoke db2, like for example, I can say db2-td add dash vf and the name of the script that I had before, which was Raul scr.txt. Let's erase this because that was done as part of this script. And as you can see, there is no need to put a semicolon here as terminating for termination of these script. Now there's a problem here because I'm putting this in Raul script, right? So I cannot execute now this because I just changed this, but that would be the syntax, okay? And because I would be, I'm invoking myself, so that was just a mistake. But assuming that that file exists, you would have invoked it the way I show you. Now let me save this and close this, and to execute it, before I execute it, I have to change the name, right? So I have to use a rename, and I'm going to rename Raul scr.txt to Raul scr.bat because that's what I need to do on Windows. If it was Linux, as said before, you can just change mod to execute the script. So now we want to execute the script, and I just press enter, and as you can see, it executed successfully. So the first operation it did was it did a dir, right, which was part of the script. It did a dir. After that, it went on and issued a db2 set db2 instance. Then it did a db2 connect, and then it did a db2 select start from dep, and it gave you the output. And you could have invoked another file to execute more information, another SQL script if you needed to. Okay, this is more articles if you want to get more information about scripting. And now I would suggest you to pause this presentation and start working with QuickLab number 5, where you can play with the creation of an installation script. So we have reached the end of lesson 3, and I want to congratulate you because you have completed lesson 3, tools and scripting. And as to what is next, it would be lesson 4, the DB2 architecture. Thank you for listening.